I'm not recording yet, but I'm just trying to get the YouTube started since I know there's going to be residents that want to watch this, but.
Fine.
Okay.
You're gonna mute so you don't have to hear my family eating dinner right now.
Okay, so I can hear Christine Lesser. I see you, I saw you. Where'd you go? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm still here. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. All right. Okay. All right. Well, it's almost okay. I guess it's 7 o'clock now. Adam, I can start whenever you're ready.
All right, Michelle, can you please call roll?
Yes, Mr. Pahovich,
Here.
Mr. McNulty,
Here.
Mr. Bellis,
Here.
Mr. Pierce,
Here?
and Ms. Harris.
Here.
Great. We have a full quorum.
Right. Do we need to come back from recess to motion on that, Michelle?
Yes, please.
Can I get a motion to come back from recess for rezoning application ZON-21-01 regarding North Farms Condominiums LLC?
So moved.
A second.
Motion made by Mr. Bellis to come back from recess for application numbers zone-21-01. A second by Mr. Pierce. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bellis,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Michelle, before we have the applicant speak to the changes, is there anything in addition? I know you sent out some letters and stuff that we've all probably taken a look at by now, but is there anything in addition you wanted to go that you had to go over first?
Well, so I sent out the list of comments that was based on staff's review and the zoning commission's review at the first hearing to the applicant. They did provide a revised submittal on April 9th, yes, or April 6th, sorry. And then they did address a majority, if not all of those comments. And then as far as any public comment, we did receive one email who I believe I forwarded that to you all yesterday by a resident of Steve Cohen.
And that was in regards to the Rockford Homes development.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. All right. Does someone with the applicant wish to speak for the changes and any new divergences from the previous request?
Yeah, this is Joe Thomas with Metro Development. Michelle, do you mind if I share my screen or?
Sure.
Okay.
You should have access now.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Joe Thomas with Metro Development. With me this evening is Todd Ferris with Ferris Planning and Design, Jill Tangeman with Voorhees, Sater, Seymour and Pease, and Steve Kuckler with Taft. I was just briefly going to go over our changes, and more importantly, I was going to have Todd Ferris address those as he is the land planner and worked diligently on changing the actual site plan and worked with the elevations of the buildings as well as setbacks and designs of the open space. So Todd Ferris, if you can go ahead and proceed on the major changes that we've noted on our plan and application.
Good evening, Todd Ferris with Ferris Planning and Design, 243 North 5th Street. In front of you is the revised site plan. Last meeting, we heard several comments about, well, secondary entry. That was deemed as something that would be beneficial. So we've added that to the south. Another comment that was received, and that was primarily by the public, was that the units all face towards the west and they would be looking into the residence's rear yards. So what we have done is modified the site plan in such a way that we have ends of buildings towards North Road, which gives it more of a residential face there, and really started orienting the buildings themselves so they're not perpendicular or parallel to North Road. So those views aren't directly into people's rear yards. Again, created larger greens interior wise for usable space. We also added a pathway system along the east portion of the site behind the unit that kind of goes around the pond, the clubhouse, and connects to the bottom next closer towards the proposed dog park. So I think those changes really help address those concerns of the residents as far as looking directly into the rear yards. Most of these aren't direct views anymore. We were also asked to look at setbacks and if we could increase those. We've decreased some, but we've increased most of them. Like I said, we have the ends of units towards North Road. And with those, what I did was locate those similar to what the single family is on the west side of the roadway. So it's a continuation of the street. If you come up to it, so it really looks like the neighborhood continues across the street, and really wanted to have that tie-in between the two separate projects. Additionally, we did receive some comments in regards to the architecture. We had one elevation type. What we did was provide two different elevation types where basically the rear of the buildings were flat before. And so what we did was take some of the porch areas and pull those out to introduce some different roof pitches, roof lines in that, so that rear elevation of the units was more interesting. So, because that's the primary elevation that you see along North Road. So we've done that. And then on the front too, we've introduced a mixture of gables and hip roofs on the different units. So inside as well, that there will be some variety. So, I don't know exactly if we're going to alternate every other one. That may look a little silly, but we're going to program exactly where those things go through and work through that with the site plan. And we've also added an element on the end of the buildings. If you look at the architectural perspectives, there's this, basically it's a meter room for the water service in there. And what we've done is heighten that. So instead of being just a traditional element, it kind of adds some architectural interest to the ends of those buildings, and where those ends are prominent towards public views is where we're going to locate those. Again, we have a tremendous amount of open space. I believe we're at 58% open space throughout the site. We've increased the usable open space by decreasing the widths of the mounds. We still have the same height of mounding throughout the site, but we decreased the width. So they're a little steeper. They're 3-to-1, which is still mowable, which is, the as steep as you'd want to get and still be maintainable. But we've been able to increase that flat land so people have more ability to have active recreation outside of their units. As far as, I know there was a question in regards to divergences. Before, we had asked for a divergence on parking to come down from 3 spaces per unit to about 2.5. I think we added a few parking spaces to this layout, so we're over what we asked for this time, but we're still asking for a divergence on that. We need to ask for a divergence on the units per any individual acre. We still have to do that. I think we actually dropped down on that though a little bit as well, as far as how many units were per acre. But we're also asking for a couple of additional divergences. One is for the lighting. The lighting plan for the multifamily plan residential district really takes your commercial lighting standards and applies it to this. And it is very bright. It is incredibly intense. So what we have proposed is a lower level lighting plan, more residential in nature, so that that won't be an issue with obviously neighbors nor internal to the site as well. And we provided this photometric plan because the last time we didn't have one that showed what the light levels were at the property line. But this one shows that we're at 0 at the property line and shows that we still illuminate the site. We also added divergence to allow model homes and sales offices as a permitted use versus a conditional use. That way we don't have to go back to the BZA to get that done. So we've added that as a divergence as well. Let's see. Are there any major highlights other than that we've done to the site plan? Again, it's a totally different site plan based on the comments. The architecture, I think we've really brought that up quite a bit and added those amenities that regional planning and your planning commission, asked for last time we met. Joe?
If I can add a couple points to that too. So for the board's reassurance, they did submit to the fire department and the fire department did review and approve the site plan. In addition, I met with Joe Thomas and Todd Ferris after the comments were sent out to go over the architectural elements to the buildings, and we discussed the lighting too. So, and really the remaining comments on there, but wanted to share that with you all.
Okay. If that's it from Todd and Joe, if you guys have anything else, or if that's good for now, I will open it up to the board now for comment.
This remains condominiums, right, for sale, correct? It's not going to be rental property. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
I like all the changes that were made. I think the lighting was important, especially for where this is. I was one of those people who wanted that other entrance. I think that's also a great add. I saw the comments from the neighborhood. They really still want the single family homes, but I think having these as condos and ownership involved is absolutely the next best thing. I still think it's a difficult piece of property with the railroad tracks and the sports facility right across the way. But no, I think you've done a good job. I really am in favor of all the modifications that you've made.
Thank you.
Yeah, I second that. It's very clear that you all made the effort to adhere to the many comments and feedback, so it looks great. I know there was one comment in relation to the permanent, was it rental/marketing office? Is there any update to that or any changes around that?
Todd, if you would address that, we made the actual update to the actual text. Todd, if you can give the exact terminology there, it'd be helpful.
I think that we asked for a permanent management office because there will be permanent management on the site just from maintenance and everything else. So we've asked for that, but not a rental office.
And I think you put a time limit on the rental office too. Once once the units are occupied. Correct.
Sales office, yes.
And I assume that management office will be in the clubhouse or that club.
That's
clubhouse building.
Yes, that's correct. Typically, the leasing, the sales office where the sales agents typically are located, that usually turns into a management office for the property management company for the condo association. They're not in there full time. They obviously are in there as needed basis for a lot of times they have meetings with the condominium board members, but they also have meetings with individual contractors such as landscape individuals, the snowplow individuals. Sometimes there's maintenance individuals they have to meet with on site. So they carry the files at that location. So there'll be a small management office inside the clubhouse.
Going back to the model units. So, and forgive me if I missed this, but I didn't really see the time limit. I just saw where it said it was asking for a divergence to remain open until all the units were sold. Is there an additional, all the units are sold or within, a year or 2 years or something like that? Was there a time limit?
Adam, I apologize. I shouldn't have used the word limit, but there is, I guess, how do I say this? There's not a specific time, but there is an ending to it.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Michelle, I had a question for you. I know our legal counsel was supposed to look into whether or not we could restrict the number of rental units that would be allowed in the condo association as part of the condo documents. Was any reply ever given by our legal counsel or by Joe Thomas, your legal counsel, regarding that?
We do have Jennifer Huber here, who is Pete Griggs's partner with his firm. So hopefully, Jen, if you don't mind responding to that.
I don't mind. And actually, Christine, I mean, that's a great question. And Pete and I talked about it. I'm familiar with that even in some other areas of my practice. So the gist of it, and we could do a whole like half-day seminar on the implication of condo rules and occupancy regulations. But in a nutshell, it's our advice that because the secondary mortgage market places such stringent and ever-changing requirements on owner occupancy, investor ownership, those kinds of hard numbers, that it would be hard to put a number at the zoning level and have that be a practical regulation going forward. I mean, it might just be one more thing that the zoning office would have to, I don't know how they would try to keep track of that. That might be pretty difficult. And never mind that the association, the condo association, is going to remain bound by all of however HUD and FHA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all of those entities direct how many units can be owned or should be owned for then a seller to be able to, or for a buyer, a future buyer of a unit to get their mortgage financed through one of those secondary programs. So in a nutshell, because those types of regulations are so closely monitored, and like I said, the FHA and HUD change those regulations on a sometimes semi-annual basis. I mean, it just whenever the mood strikes them, it would be a very difficult and unwieldy thing to put in a zoning level, and it remains something that all the parties and the association will have to be keeping track of going forward anyway.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it sounds like the gist of it is no, there can be no restrictions.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it'd be a good idea. Yeah.
Even though it's being proposed as a condo, there are no limits onto how many of those units will be owned versus how many will be rented out.
Well, I would say that there are practical limits that likely will be governed by those secondary market entities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They might not be part of the zoning, but they're going to be bound in other ways more practically through just the operation of the market.
Okay, so I know that was one of the questions on the list that we have, so thank you.
Of course.
So I have some other comments to make. I don't know if I should just go ahead and, okay, I'm getting the nod from people. So I don't have a problem with the parking variance. I never really, you're asking for less. I'm not too worried about that. I'm not concerned about the variance for the units per acre. We always have trouble calculating anyway how many units there are per acre, because some acres, some have more, some have less. I'm not concerned about the lighting variance in terms of reducing the lighting so it's more residential. I don't have a problem with that. I know you're still asking for a divergence for the model homes and sales office. I understand there's sort of a a sunset clause that after a certain number of units are sold, that you will no longer need those model homes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's a very typical process through the condominium sales, as far as the need or want. Once everything is typically in contract, we typically sell the actual models themselves. It's the terminology, of course, is a little. There's obviously people go into contract and then there's a closing. So once we have everything in contract, we shut down the models and move on. And then, of course, the closing will happen at a later date, typically within 30, 45, 60 days of the contract. So there will be that lagged where all the units may be in contract, but they won't all be closed upon or occupied. So there is some lag time there when the models stay in place.
I don't have a problem with that as long as they're not perpetual.
No, it's the sales office usually is the last portion to close.
And I don't have a problem with a condo association office or whatever you want to call it in the clubhouse. I don't have a problem with that. So that I'm okay with. I noticed you added the second entrance, and I noticed that the fire department also said, yes, you need that second entrance. So that is good because I was very concerned. My biggest issue still is, and I'll just be honest, is that you're asking for a divergence for the number of units permitted in multifamily. So that this site was originally zoned single family with 43 units is my understanding. And now you're asking for it to be zoned multifamily, which allows for 4 units per acre. And you're asking for almost 6 units per acre for a divergence for that. Is that still correct, Michelle? Is what I'm understanding correctly? So you are still going above the density that is allowed in our multifamily. And because you were originally zoned residential, I have an issue with that. I also, I feel bad for the neighbors. I remember, it took me a while because it was back in 2015 in December when you all came before the zoning commission. I was part of the commission and you asked to rephase this project with MI Homes and Rockford Homes and as yourself. I have concerns because it looks like MI Homes has pretty much completed their phases. Rockford Homes has done most of their phases on the west side of North, and now they're moving into the east side along the railroad tracks and putting in single family homes there. Y'all were also originally supposed to put in single family homes. I know it's a difficult site, so I understand the need to perhaps have greater density. I am just very concerned the fact that you're going from 4 units to almost 6 units. You're going from what was originally zoned 43 units to 144 units. That's 100 more units than what your neighbors have bought into and what MI Homes and Rockford agreed to 5-6 years ago. That has me very concerned. And I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, this is Adam. So just kind of going off of Christine's comments there, the density is a little bit of a concern, obviously with the opposition across the street. One of the things I liked about, I would say about one of the previous submittals, I think a few ones back, was the buffer and amount of spacing that there was up front. And in this plan, I see why, as you brought in a second drive, I mean, I see why you did what you did here as far as shifting these units around and redeveloping the site this way. But for me, what's labeled, I think on this plan here even is units 1 and 18 and then 13 and 14, which are the 4 units closest to the road there. To me, it would make more sense if those were gone, then we're kind of getting a much better relationship with and buffer between, single family and this multifamily site. And I get, so many units, financially it makes sense, otherwise it's, if you go down to so many units, it's probably not going to you're going to get a good return on it. But, you know, if there was a second building type or maybe something that was smaller or a way to get to where we still have that big, you know, green space, you know, between these units in the multi-family or a single family across the street, I think would go a long way. And then just one other quick comment here. And our code doesn't get into the specifics on this. And that's why I'm just, as a suggestion, if this does move forward, you know, we talk about four-sided architecture, which is in our code, but I really appreciate these 3D, you know, renderings. I think that really helps everybody kind of visualize things. But, you know, one thing I think I would like to see if things move forward is just, you know, whether it's continuing that water table across the sides and maybe in the back, or, you know, some of these larger spans between windows and things where it's just siding. If there was a way to help break that up, maybe introduce something, you know, on those elevations, I think would go a long way as well. That elevation 4 there is a good 2 and 4, that one side. You kind of have the 2 windows and then, you know, this long span of siding there. You know, if it would be possible to continue the water table, maybe, you know, introduce something, and I'm not going to design it, but I'm just saying, I think that would make the 4-sided architecture more present. So those were my comments.
You know, I'm curious on, I'm sorry, I don't know, maybe they have a response to your comments. I apologize.
No, I mean, Les, go ahead. We can just get everything in and then we'll just have Joe and everybody address those at once.
Yeah, I'm curious on the consideration for the divergence where you have more units added to from 4 to 6 or what have you. What drove that? And, you know, was there some market study you did that indicated that you know, a condominium community needs to have X or something? I mean, as I think Dennis said earlier about the difficult piece of property and so forth. I mean, I like the layout. I like everything that you've done. You've certainly been responsive in that regard. Can you give us some color as to what drove the huge divergence?
Yeah, this is Joe Thomas again with Metro Development. Adam, first of all, yes, we agree to the fact that there probably needs to be some additional elements of architectural details on the sides of the buildings. We don't have any problems working on that particular element. And Mr. Pierce, as far as the density on this particular community, we've fashioned this similar to what we did over at Village of Olentangy Crossing. Similar size community as far as the elements of the community center, the pool area, the open space, and the economics and I guess the numbers where it comes down to a condominium development is to make it, you know, of an element of the community as far as all the amenities that we provide inside these communities to make them reasonable and affordable for the residents. You kind of get into the numbers where you try to, of that, you know, community level of the clubhouse, the pool, the walking trails, the open space and the management thereof, you know, the trees, the buffers, those are all elements that you have to spend, you know, quite a bit of money annually maintaining those items. And we like to, for targeting that size clubhouse, pool and amenities is around 150 units. Understand that, you know, this community has a little bit smaller acreage than what we had previously over at the Village of Olentangy Crossing. We were, you know, reasonable in the amount of going down to the 144 unit total. Because what we're really sensitive of is not necessarily just a condominium fee, but the price point of what we're trying to sell these condominiums for. The element of these sales prices, as I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing from me, but is the challenge of the location of being at the corner of Shanahan and the railroad track. Now, forgive me, I know this is probably something that's way off base from what we're currently talking about, but Rockford Homes, unfortunately, or fortunately, they did have a lot of success on what would be the west side of North Road. However, they own the ground on the east side. They don't necessarily build condominiums. So they moved forward with their final phase of condos. And they've been there for about roughly 18 months, and they've sold 13 homes so far. In the market today, average sales for Rockford Homes is 1.5 units per day, whereas in 18 months they sold 13 homes, so that's less than a home per month on this development itself. And I just put up on the screen a letter from the president and CEO of Rockford Homes as far as the number of sales and how long they've been there in that location. But again, I guess not to harp on the matter again, was the number of units is really circular around trying to get the price point for those type of amenities and necessary to get the more of the affordability aspect of a condominium to reach roughly $225,000 sales price for the first floor and $250,000 for the second floor. And those things all tie together.
Joe, would you mind zooming in on that so the public can see that?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
So the price, just real quick, the price point starts at 225. For some reason I thought it was 250 in our last conversation, but I could just be making that number. But so it's 225 is where we're coming in for the.
It's all right, Les. I have in my notes between 225 and 250. So
Okay.
that might be your.
Okay.
Hold on, Michelle. I'm trying to get this in Zoom.
That's okay.
So I have this, and then I also have their sales records. So just to read it into the record, this is from Robert Yoakum, President and CEO of Rockford Homes. Letter is a follow-up to the additional potential interests on behalf of Rockford Homes on the 24-acre parcel directly north of our current North Farm Section 9. We released Section 9 for sale to the public January 20th, 2020, of which over the last 15 months, we have sold 13 contracts to date. With a sales pace of less than one sale per month during this time, which we have seen our company's volume increase to close to 1.5 contracts per day, we don't feel there is a sustainable market at this location for single-family homes and do not have any interest in exploring continuation of our North Farms development. There are many factors, including the decision, but the largest deterrent for us being up against the railroad tracks and the desirability of our single-family product in that specific location.
Now, of course, it doesn't help that they released them for sale 2 months before COVID impacted a lot of people at this price point you're talking about in terms of buying a house.
Joe, for bringing that to our attention. I think that letter is very powerful to making the truthful argument about the piece of property.
Yeah, I agree.
And just to discuss it further, I also went back to MI Homes and had them obviously look at the development again as well. So just kind of the whole history of the development. We initially wanted MI Homes to buy the additional 43 lots for their development, just as Rockford Homes developed both the east side and west side of North Road. We were wanting MI Homes to develop in the same vein. However, the hesitancy of MI Homes from the very start was the railroad. So, from a standpoint of the sales going back in 2015, we thought there would be other buyers that would be able to buy that product. As I mentioned before, we've marketed to not only Rockford and to MI Homes, but we've also discussed it with Pulte Homes. We've also discussed it with Schottenstein Homes. We've also discussed it with the condominium builders, which was Epcon Communities was one of the developers. Again, the hesitancy was, of course, the tracks. Our thought was back in 2015, the price point of homes were such a matter that they can possibly have a price point that would be helpful for residents that would not have a much as concern with the railroad if the price point of the homes was in the 300s. But as the market has increased so dramatically, the typical price point in this area is over 500, and that's where the challenge is.
Okay, is there any other further comment from the board?
I had one follow-up question from Ms. Jennifer Huber. Just to make sure I understand the tenant to owner ratio comment that you were making. So you were saying that the market would regulate basically the owner occupied units. Do you mean that when a prospective owner applies for a mortgage and that mortgage provider says, hey, you qualify for this mortgage as long as it's owner occupied? Is that what you were referring to as far as the market regulating?
Yeah, to some extent, the lender will reach out to condo associations in some extent, or read the documents, that have been recorded with the county recorders, see what, if anything, different documents say. Sometimes they ask the question. Associations can also get, or condo projects can get pre-approved with the lending programs, and they have to rigorous application process, have to give all this data around, what the regulations provide, what the deed restrictions provide, et cetera. And if they are approved either through the pre-approval or otherwise, it's called like a site condo, they can sort of get like one-off approvals as well. Then that makes it easier for a prospective buyer to get their secondary mortgage, their mortgage financed through the secondary market approved. So it makes the unit easier to sell, or it has at least a wider audience for potential purchasers. So between FHA and HUD and all of those entities setting those regulations, what threshold they want to see as owner occupied, then that regulates the buyer's market, right, and sell it the market through those regulations.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
I was actually just going to comment. I'm with Dennis. Thank you for providing these letters for the public record, as it were, because it is a difficult site. I do understand that. I still have some concerns about the fact that our not single family, but our multifamily is 4 units per an acre, and you're asking for 2 additional units, almost a density of 5.99. So that would still be a variance that you are requesting that needs to be documented.
Okay, any further comments from the board? All right.
Joe, if I can share my screen again. Okay. Sorry, Adam, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. All right, so can I get a motion to recommend approval for zoning application number Z?
Sorry, Adam, I'm sorry. So just before we move forward with the recommendation, if we are going to start with the approval, I did add a modification to the approval recommendation to add additional architectural features to the side elevations. Is that something that the commission would like to include in the recommendation? I thought to add that based on earlier discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I support that. I don't know the rest of the board. I'm assuming anybody.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay. All right.
Is it also your practice, sorry to interject, to formally close the hearing at this point, or do you make a decision and take the position that formally closes it? I could go either way.
We've gone that your last point is making.
Understood.
Okay.
Oh, so close the hearing. Okay. So at this time, we'll formally close the hearing for ZON-21-01. Can I get a recommendation for approval of zoning application number ZON-21-01 North Farms Condominiums LLC with stated modifications?
Second.
Well,
Can
Dennis,
you read it? I can read it.
okay.
Motion by Mr. McNulty to recommend to the Board of Township Trustees, the board, the conditional approval of zoning application ZON-21-01 of North Farms Condominiums LLC. The property owner requesting the rezoning of 25.4 plus minus acres from single-family planned residential district SFPRD to multifamily planned residential district MFPRD. Upon finding that is in the interest of the public convenience, comfort, prosperity, or general welfare, and is sufficiently in accordance with the comprehensive plan. The version of the application recommended to be approved consists of those materials submitted by the applicant in a hard copy binder titled The Reserve at North Farms, the pages of which are each stamped "Received with Orange Township zoning" above, and January 22nd, 2021, superimposed by Orange Township zoning, modified as reflected in the updated development plan dated April 6, 2021. Collectively, the development plan and modifications listed below. Number 1, add additional architectural features to side elevations. Further move to recommend approval of the divergences requested by the applicant and described in more detail in the development plan. Further move that the zoning secretary shall certify a copy of this resolution to the board.
I second the motion.
Motion made by Mr. McNulty to recommend approval of zoning application number ZON-21-01 of North Farms Condominium LLC, including one modification. Seconding that is Mr. Pierce. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
No.
Ms. Trabellis,
No.
Mr. McNulty, Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, well, that's what I have on the agenda for this evening. And Mr. Pahovich, if I may, I know I'm seeing some comments on the YouTube chat. Again, public comment was closed for this hearing. When this application will be sent over to the Board of Trustees for their hearing, and public comment will reopen then.
Okay. All right, so meeting adjourned then, I guess, unless you said there's nothing else, right, Michelle?
That's it.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks for everyone's time. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.